Now, our next speaker is Nuritzi Sanchez. And she's going to talk about how they are going to reach out for people in developing countries, and also new with the technology usage. So please welcome her.
Thank you. My slide just went out. Hold on. Read this. Okay. So my name is Nuritzi, and I'm part of Endless, which is a company that's making software for the developing world and new to tech users. But what do I mean by that? I will tell you. First, what is Endless? Endless is a Linux distro, and we use the GNOME stack. However, we've heavily modified it to make it easier for people who might never have used a computer, or who have a computer but just aren't really tech savvy. If you have any questions about the technical specs, Jonathan and Cosimo are here to answer those. I'm not part of the engineering team, I'm part of the content team, which basically helps to decide what to put on Endless and all of the different apps that we're going to be building. In this presentation, I'm first going to tell you a little bit more about what I mean by our target user. It's really vague to just say we're building for the developing world. So we'll go over that, and then we'll also talk about just what we've learned, what are some specific challenges that we think are unique to this target market, and how we think that all open source communities, including GNOME, and things that we want to do ourselves to better reach this target user. Okay, so some of you may have been here for Matt Dahlio's keynote speech a couple of years ago, so some of these slides will look a little bit familiar to you. This first one is the world that we are currently building technology for. This is the y-axis basically is income, and this is amount of people, and this is above $30,000. And so we see most of our technology today being built for our lifestyles. These are watches to help you turn to the left when you have to, or strapping a GoPro to your head as you speed walk through Sweden, or just make things a little bit faster. I don't know if you guys watch Silicon Valley. This is a shout out to that. If you don't, you should. And everything's moving to the cloud. Things are built for PLUs, people like us. And so when we say we're building technology for the developing world, people think, oh, but okay, I guess that's the people who don't have technology, people who are in poverty, and images of people who don't have food or shelter or live in villages without electricity come to mind, basically images of poverty in the developing world. And that's actually not our first target user. Our target user is the middle portion of this income distribution bell curve, the largest segment of the world's population. And it's people who have food, have shelter, might have a TV. There are multiple generations living under the same roof oftentimes, or they live in really condensed areas. And they don't always have access to healthcare or education when they need to. And so just to give you a better example of who our target user is, because this is just starting to understand, I'd like you to meet Froude Athena, who's one of our users in Guatemala. She purchased a computer for her children originally because they're trying to learn English. And so they've used Endless to help themselves.
Nunca me he considerado una mujer de negocios. Estaba haciendo tortillas en mi casa para el barrio, igual que mi mamá y su mamá. Cuando me di cuenta de Endless, dije, no, las computadoras no son para mí, son para mis hijos y sus futuros. pero Endless es diferente. Viene cargada con programas para negocios que trabajan sin internet. Ahora sé que el futuro de mis hijos también puede ser mi futuro. Mi nombre es Florentina y mi misión es el futuro.
Whoops, that's not working. Okay. So, so as I mentioned, this is Florentina, and most of her access to the computer doesn't involve the internet. And right now, like my computer right now, without internet access is almost useless. Like it has a few programs, but I rely so heavily on the internet. And so for her, offline capabilities are really important. And I think the little access that she does have is through 3G dongles, which I'll talk about more later in the presentation. So for a family like this, it's not only productivity, it's also an educational tool. And Endless right now is building a computer primarily for consumers, so with the idea that it shouldn't just be available at schools, but people should be able to afford them for their own homes. I think this aligns a lot with free software in general, just like the idea that everybody should have access to free software. And we right now have started shipping this Endless computer. It's just a CPU basically that you plug into a television, turns your television into a desktop computer. And we've done that to lower the cost of peripherals. What we've found from our users is that people want the best thing that they can afford, not the cheapest thing that is available. So we know that there are Raspberry Pis, that there are chip computers that cost $9. Saw that on Kickstarter. And that's not really what we're doing right now because, again, we've heard that our users want the processing power available to run videos, to like Khan Academy videos and things like that. We've also started to create apps that are made more for some of the challenges that they have. Farming app, for example, to figure out what kind of when to replant your crops or weather conditions, things like this. Resume building app, and right now I think that there are Linux applications that do some of these things, but they're not as tailored again, and I'll go into why that is, and just the need to be able to create more of these as we go. Okay, so I'd like to share some of our learnings around specific challenges that our users keep bringing to our attention. The first are user experience expectations. A mobile paradigm is something that is really important because a lot of our users may not have been able to afford a computer, but they are more familiar with smartphones and tablets. And so the idea of just clicking something and it opening is intuitive. They're not as familiar with menu systems and having to navigate through all of these different layers in order to just open a simple application. And so along with that, we've tried to mimic mobile apps in that you have a splash screen and then it goes into a full screen application. Again, we've stuck to kind of like the bare bones, no menu systems and things like that. Something to point out too is that we do have this toolbar in all of our apps because we found that when our users launch some games, for example, that are full screen and don't have that toolbar, they get stuck. They don't know how to escape or use buttons to really navigate through things. So it's important to have that toolbar at the very top. Also, I think something that GNOME does much better than we do right now is have touch. And we're still exploring around that. Our desktop isn't built for touch interface right now. So it's something that we're going to keep exploring and doing user research on. The other thing to mention around these expectations are that a lot of our users don't know that there are so many Linux apps available, like free software. They have no clue. And if they do try to find them, they do a Google search and they don't know how to download it, especially not in their language. And right now there isn't one solid like repository really with all of the Linux apps that are available. And so in order to help with this, we've tried to consolidate them all within our app center. They're all preloaded onto the computer so that people don't need to rely on an internet connection to download them and add them. Users can just look through. We have a menu system, again, because the multiple layers aren't as helpful, and you just add it to the desktop. It appears right there, and then again, it's one click. A different learning curve. Okay, so something that comes up again and again, our users don't always know how to create passwords. And so they'll sometimes write them down on a piece of paper, forget them, or else have caps lock on and not know how to get into their account again. And so in the first good experience, we tried to include a layer of text just to say, you know, write it down or write down a password reminder, but remember other people are going to be able to see it. And so really be a friendly voice kind of guiding them without assuming that this is common sense. Also with wireless networks, a lot of times people will forget their password, or also they don't quite understand what it means to have a computer that comes with Wi-Fi. They think, oh, maybe it's already installed somehow. And so when they see something like this, if they have neighbors that have Wi-Fi, oftentimes our users will think, oh, maybe I have it too somehow. And so this text, again, is meant to kind of explain, if you do have Wi-Fi, this is where you find it. Something else that we've come across that we don't have a good solution for is that oftentimes everybody will have the same name. It'll be like TurboNet or something like that, TurboNet 5, TurboNet 22. And they don't know which one is theirs. And so we don't have a good solution for this yet, but it's something that we all need to solve for in the future. And also a layer of text, like people don't really read it, so this is our initial attempt at solving this problem, but it's something that I think that we can all work on for the first good experience. Okay, so videos. I know that GNOME does have introductory videos, and something again that we've found is that our users aren't always familiar with things like clicking and what exactly how to interact with the computer system. So our attempt to do this again is to have an interactive tutorial where every time you see an orange circle, you have to actually click on it to get to the next set of the tutorial. We also explained that with internet, you can use it as a communication tool. So put it as a feature as opposed to something that is like inherent, and of course you have internet. The other big thing is we've adapted Yelp to make it a little bit more user-friendly, and the big thing is adding a menu to the left-hand side, again to make it hierarchical and more intuitive to our users. We've added some of the main questions that we've received to the very front, things like where are my documents and files, and some videos. The where are my documents and files actually is really interesting because, and I see Quaylon's here, so LibreOffice comes pre-installed as one of the main apps, and it's very popular, of course. But a lot of our users don't know how to name files, how to save them, where to look for them afterwards, and they don't necessarily go to the help section on the right menu to find that. And so we'd love to play around with maybe tutorial overlays or something. A lot of mobile apps have that, but not a lot of desktop apps, and it could be something interesting to explore as we develop the next set of desktop applications. This is just a few other screens on the types of things that we have added, other pages that we've added to Yelp. Things like supporting 3G dongles, and this is the point that I very briefly mentioned before, It's that a lot of our users will buy 3G dongles and they'll buy a limited set of data to be able to connect to the internet so that their kids can do research for their paper and not have to go to the internet cafe. And so some of our users have had trouble connecting, and so that's one of the pages that we added to try to support that. Also, Bluetooth is so, a lot of our users think that Bluetooth is actually the internet, and so we've added just a little line to say, Bluetooth doesn't allow you to connect to the web. It allows you to connect to other devices, and you can send files, but it's a big misconception that we've come across. This is really interesting to us. Because a lot of our users haven't owned a computer before, they have smartphones again, they're not familiar with the W for Microsoft Word, things like that. And so instead of designing icons that are cool or trendy or visually appealing, we've really had to stick to things that convey the subject matter of the app. So you can see the writer, it's supposed to be like a paper, and all of these different things that to our users have seemed more intuitive. Oh, and this is again just to remind everybody to try to, when building for this type of user, design has to change even. People may associate buses with travel instead of airplanes with travel, things like this. So little details matter. The other thing we've discovered is that our users aren't aware of the breadth of the internet. And so the top 3 websites are really Google and Facebook and like an email client maybe. And so this is our attempt at helping to show them the richness of the internet. It's called the Discovery Center, and so we point them out to things like Codecademy and Learn a Language and job sites and things like this. Along with that, also the newspaper, because a lot of people rely still on paper. They don't know that that a lot of things are available in digital media. And so this Fedora, I think, defaults to Fedora News. Yes, which isn't as relevant again for our users, and they may not know that you can find other types of news online too. The other key point is that while there are awesome projects like Project Loon and a lot of other things that are trying to get more internet access to people in the world, 60% of the world still lives outside of the internet, which means that, and even people who are connected right now oftentimes have slow connections, intermittent connections. It's expensive, and so it's just not as available as in all parts of the world. Without a connection, a computer oftentimes can be rather useless, or if not useless, it definitely loses potential, power. And so we think that a way around that is to have a lot of preloaded content on there. For example, we've downloaded Wikipedia so that people have that availability even if they're not able to connect. Virtual School is downloaded a lot of Khan Academy videos, and then we have PDFs on health resources. I think that a big way that we can all improve this is just keep in mind that apps will need to work without internet connectivity, and so like building just for the cloud is probably not the best way to go. Or also, realizing that since a lot of our users have 3G dongles, they won't have unlimited internet, so planning for that. One of the things that we're currently doing is a lot of telecom carriers have special data plans, or they're willing to do a data plan where it can users can have free data at midnight or something like that, so your computer can update at night while you sleep, and so in the morning you can wake up with a bunch of fresh content, and And so we're still exploring how we develop our own apps to take advantage of this. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's for the whole family. These are some of our users in Mexico. And you have, grandparents, you have young children. And so building apps for children. When we were trying to find pre-existing Linux apps, for example, I was trying so hard to find things for children between the ages of like 3 and 5 to teach them the ABCs or just anything really. I couldn't find one. This is one of the most popular apps right now on our system, above gedit. Jonathan wanted me to include that. And it's just a very simple thing that appeals to kids, And so building more apps for young children would be incredible. We have, 5 Sudoku apps, but not one to teach kids the ABCs. This is our attempt at creating at least something for a younger audience. We have preloaded PDF books so that families can engage and read to their children and access things again offline. The other big thing about this is parental controls, which is something that I don't think that GNOME does yet very well, and open software in general. So many parents are terrified that their kids will go chat with some stranger who will kidnap them or start talking drug deals with local, hooligans, and or just access porn sites. And so it's really important for parents to feel like their children are safe from these things. It's not something that we have done particularly well yet, and it's something that, again, we're exploring and would like to collaborate on improving. The other thing to keep in mind is that there is a lot of old hardware. And this is actually something that GNOME does pretty well, and open software in general, is build for old software, or have compatibility with it. And it's just to remind everybody to keep doing that. There are going to be still internet cafes, community centers that have really old hardware, and so it's important to be able to keep these up to date too, and not just build for the coolest new, LCD TV. I'm not even sure what the newest thing is. I'm sure there's something better than LCD. And yeah, remember to keep building. So then the 3 big things that I'd like everybody to take away are just, again, that user learning is different, that things like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi may not be super intuitive to everybody. So let's think about ways to build for almost 2 audiences, somebody who already has that knowledge and somebody who does not. Again, not sure what the answer is here yet, but it's something to think about. The idea that still 60% of the world lives outside of the internet, so it is important to think about offline use and how you can take advantage of, intermittent updates. And then lastly, the children. Remember the children. Build apps for them, and also just maybe help us with parental controls, because that's a big thing. So, and that is all. Thank you. Now, questions?
Yeah, I have a good question.
Sure.
First, how do you communicate with the users? I guess that must be a challenge.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I was just asking how you are communicating with users, because that might be a challenge in the environment you're operating.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm so glad I have this microphone on. So we have a user research team. We've had it from the very beginning. Actually, when we started our branch in San Francisco, we opened a branch in Brazil, because we do a lot of user research in Latin America. That's where we have launched our product first. We currently have people also in the Middle East, and we're starting to do research in Africa. And a lot of our users are from favelas and kind of the poor rural areas themselves, a lot of our team members, which really helps us be able to go open doors in communities and kind of have conversations a lot of our research is quantitative and really just trying to understand what are, goals and aspirations for these family members, what would really benefit, what are, fears that they might have. And it really has helped us to, I think, better tailor the experience.
Yeah. So I have another question. So I understand you now have a basic product that you have made public and launched to some degree, but like, how do you get that product into people's homes, and how do you get people buying those on this market?
Yes. So we are currently doing sales prototypes in Guatemala and in Mexico. We have an e-commerce site, and we have had some sales through that. But so actually a few different ways. One is we did a Kickstarter project earlier this year, and we recognized that wasn't our target market. It was really just to have other people understand what we do and just see how we might all be able to work better together. And some of those users were involved in nonprofits and things like that, or have their own organizations in various countries. And now we've started to receive orders from them where they say, I've tried out Endless, I think it's great for my organization. And so you've seen places like in South Africa that they bought a computer lab for a community there or something like that. And so that's just one of the ways. The other way is, as I said, we're exploring offline sales, because a lot of our users don't go to things like Best Buy in their countries, or they don't, have a lot of access to the internet. So we've gone to, we set up kiosks and start to spread awareness. But then also the big thing that we're doing is we're partnering with banks to offer financing options, because that's one of the things that we found is the biggest, barrier, is having a finance option available to them. And working with organizations like Rebuilding Together, is that what it is? And Habitat for Humanity and FUNCEPA and a few others that do packages where maybe a family will apply for a loan to fix their roof, and then they also bundle in a computer and they can pay it off month to month to month.
Any more questions?
Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. A comment and then a question. So I do design mostly, and I think one of the really interesting things for me looking at this presentation is that it really ties in with what I see as one of the core goals of the GNOME project, which is to look beyond our own community and to create software that isn't just for people who also make free software. And your comments about designing for people who aren't familiar with technical conventions, I think can hold true for us just as much as it does for you. I think there's a lot of people in the developed world that don't know what Bluetooth is and don't know how it works, for example. And so, I don't think I think explaining something like that would be just as relevant for the upstream GNOME project as it would be for Endless, for example. I think that'd be a very good thing to do. So just a minor question, really. I saw in your slides of your help browser that you have videos, and it looks like it was actual screencasts.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how you handle translations and things like that for that, because we have videos and handling translation has been a barrier for us.
And that's something, exactly. That's something that we're going to be exploring more right now. So another thing is some of our users don't have speakers, or they don't, connect to the audio. And so the video has audio, but all of the words are underneath too. And so then that's just translated. But we're actually looking into other ways to do translations with videos, so it's actually something that I wanted to talk to other people about too. So it's a common problem. Anybody else?
Yep. So, having a docs localization session Monday morning. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
a great opportunity to have the conversation about videos and translations, because we're just looking into changing the getting started experience for upstream GNOME.
Great.
So it'll be interesting to see whether we could, make it a bit
Are you
closer
Petter?
to, yeah, I'm
Okay, great. Yeah, I want to talk to you.
That's me. So it starts at 9, and so whoever is interested, we will be there. Thanks.
Speaking of videos and tutorials, I got one of the devices home, and what I really found interesting was the built-in tutorial in GNOME Shell, that it pretty much guided the user through all the widgets and elements of the UI. Is this something we can, how was it done, and is it something we can, for example, use in GNOME? Because this is definitely something I love to see in GNOME itself.
Are you asking from a technical perspective, kind of how it's done? Yes, if so,
Just-
this guy.
It's fake. It's not the actual shell. It's HTML.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's how it's done. Ideally, we would have a way to do it just in the shell.
Yeah.
I found it much more useful than the videos itself, because it prompted the user to actually try those things and play with them.
And that's a lot of the, like right now, again, our apps are very much like read-only, and we really want to add that element of interactive, because it's the best way to really teach and to, maintain interest. Any other questions? Zach?
So following on from the talk downstairs about developer experience, is one goal for Endless teaching people who want to learn developing free software and empowering them to do that and changing software on the Endless computer?
Yeah, there's a user story of this girl in Brazil who was studying, I forget what she was studying before, maybe was really interested in math, had won a computer from a competition, and ended up starting to use Endless, found Khan Academy, but some like coding videos on it, and then started using those, looked at Code Academy and started teaching herself how to program, and now she's decided that she wants to become a software engineer. And just in general, I think it's incredible how powerful just discovery is, right? Like some of our users don't know that computer science is meant for them or really know very much about it. And so just, you can create a simple programming app, this is something on our to-do list, that maybe appeals to little girls or something and is gamified. And so then it might not show like all of the actual like learnings, or it might not be really code teaching intensive, but it kind of interests somebody, and then you point them out to Code Academy, and then you point them out to other resources where they can keep continuing to build that knowledge. But it's that like inspiration that we really seek, and to kind of expose people to more that they can do. But yes, and that's actually a huge thing that we want to do too, is, we have a bunch of Wikipedia content on here, but people are consuming it right now, and we really want to get our users to start creating it too. And we were talking before about open maps and how maybe our users can start to contribute to that too, because they're the ones living in all these areas that are not well mapped. But right now the tools aren't very user friendly. You have to have an account in order to contribute to OpenStreetMap, and there are all these things that just might scare away people who are new to tech. So this is again that challenge of how can you make it a much more simplified experience, so that if people do have access to technology, now they can start contributing. And that's something that I personally am so excited about, because for example, with microfinance loans, a lot of our users don't have access to loans because they have to have receipts for electricity and all these other things. And there are only a couple of institutions in their area that might give them loans, but they don't know where they are, they don't know how to apply for it and things like this. And if you go to organizations' websites, like even Grameen Bank, which is kind of like the big guy in microfinance, they only have a website built for donors. It's not for people who are interested in actually receiving the microfinance loans. And so I think that as, again, the next billion are able to afford technology, are able to use it, websites and just applications in general will be designed differently because it's no longer, oh, these users will never even see this web page, but they'll be actually able to use it. Anything else? Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you. At 3:30, we'll be. At 4:30, we'll be having a group photo, which will be taken out just outside the building. So everyone, please join. Thank you.